Well, it's great to meet you, Patrick. Thank you so much for
Likewise.
taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Ben, thank you
So,
for having me.
yeah, you bet, man. So before we get into your world, I want to know this. 6 years ago, this pandemic changed our lives dramatically. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you do things today?
Joe, that's a question nobody's ever asked me, which
Yeah.
which is great. It was a really difficult time for me personally, because I had some family issues. My wife of 23 years had come down with some really personal mental and health issues that kind of all collided in one big dramatic devastating moment for me when I was in Boston because I just launched my book Fear is Fuel, hit number 5 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, and I had all these interviews lined up on TV, in Boston, New York, DC, and I get this news from my family who were in France at the time, and that's where the kids were in school, and our second home is, and and I was devastated first, and then I said, okay, I'm going to come right home. I'll be there tomorrow. We'll get everything sorted out. We'll take care of the family, and 2 days later, I had a plane ticket, and the president of France, Macron, said nobody's coming in and out of France unless they have a French passport. And I was in Boston at the
Yeah.
time, and so I couldn't get home. I couldn't get to my family, put it that way. And they're going through, the most challenging time for us as a family, and I got stuck in Boston in my house there for 3 months by myself without touching, seeing, talking to another human in person, because everything was on lockdown. And I had, DoorDash delivering, or I'd go to Whole Foods at, whatever allotted times they had. And so getting through that pandemic for me, Joe, was two things, I would say. Well, three things. The third's theme in my life, but the first thing was being able to be outside. So, in a small town where I have a house in Boston called Bedford, you could go out and you could walk, you could run, you could bicycle, within certain parameters. So it wasn't totally locked down. I could get outside. So every morning I'd start the day by getting outside and going for a walk, and doing some burpees out on the trail and everything else. And the second thing that got me through, which was usually the second half of my, hour to 90-minute walk in the morning, was FaceTiming my kids. So my kids are back in France. I'd FaceTime them every morning, Boston time, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and they were 6 hours ahead. And just being able to take advantage of that amazing technology, right? And so how thankful I was, because I thought, if I was really isolated myself, I don't think I'd be able to handle it, because it was such a tough time. But seeing them and talking to them and everything else, that was the biggest thing that probably got me through the pandemic. And the second thing, the reason I'm laughing, is my neighbor had a dog just like the one that I had, for my family. So I'd go next door. The neighbor would let the dog out, like wouldn't come outside because, COVID, and would let the dog out. And I'd play with the dog for, half an hour, 45 minutes, and just get, a little love from four paws and a really happy dog.
So let's get into what you do right now on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day, and the kid in
Yeah.
the back of the room wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize and explain that to them?
So the first thing I'd say is I create unicorns. And the 12-year-olds would probably raise an eyebrow to that, but I've started 5 tech companies, and I've invested in more than 70, mostly through this group in Silicon Valley called Y Combinator. And one thing that I've determined over 20 years of doing both the investing and the building of my own companies is you can create structure to scale very quickly, to become very big and very profitable and very successful if you understand what it takes to get there. And most people don't understand because startups don't fail because people aren't trying hard enough, people don't have a good enough idea, people didn't get the right funding. Those aren't the reasons, the root reasons that they fail. The reasons they fail is the companies don't have the belief that they need and the conviction to make these fast, aggressive decisions. And a great example is if you look back to any great product. I'll use Tesla as an example. There's a founder, there's someone who started that company or came up with that idea who thinks to themselves, this is what the world could look like in 5 years or 10 years from now. And then you've got the rest of the world on the other side, and they're saying, this is what the world is. This guy's crazy. There's no way you can build an all electric car that's faster than a Porsche that goes 300 miles on one charge and that costs $35,000. That's ridiculous. So this gap that you've got between your vision as a founder and the rest of the world is what I call the belief gap. So what I do as an advisor and as a venture capital partner is I help companies navigate that belief gap so they can go from being a 5-person company into a 500-person company and really have an impact on the world.
So, what did you want to be when you were 12 or 13 years old? What was your dream gig?
Dream gig was probably being a veterinarian.
Yeah. Um, so let me ask you this. How did you get this Olympic skill? How did you develop into this prowess with entrepreneurship? How did this happen?
So it initially happened, Joe, out of fear, because I grew up very blue collar, Boston Irish. No one in my family went to college. I was the first kid to go to college, paid for it myself, and I always had this. I had this fear of everything. I was terrified to fly. I was afraid to talk, to the class or ask a girl out, or I just had this tremendous fear. And first I thought, okay, if I get really good at a sport, I'll get respect and I'll build some courage. And I started rowing in college and won a national championship, then got invited to the Olympic Training Center, then spent 6 years training full time for the Olympics. And I did get a lot of courage, but it was all on the water, very specific to one situation where I had this confidence and I knew what to do. And then I thought to myself, well, if I make a lot of money, I'll have the chance to really build courage and people respect me and I'll be strong. And so I set this goal after I went to business school for 40 by 40. I'm going to make myself a net worth of $40 million by the time I'm 40 years old, and everyone will respect me and I'll be strong and courageous. And uh, I was maybe 3 years into building a company, and that's when the wheels came off, and all that fear and all that shame and all that embarrassment turned out to drive a level of stress and a situation in my body where everything fell apart. I had no immune system. I ended up in the hospital. They couldn't figure out the local hospital what it was, so they sent me to Johns Hopkins. The guys at Johns Hopkins said, we're not sure what it is, but you have no white blood cells. So if you have no immune system, and if this treatment we're going to try doesn't work, you've probably got 2 weeks left to live. And my daughter was a year old. My wife was 6 months pregnant. And I'm hearing this for the first time. And the only thing I could think about was I had this tremendous feeling of regret that I let my daughter down, that I let my wife down, that I let everyone down because I just felt fear. And so I swore if I got out of that hospital, that I was going to change my life. I was going to get over this fear of flying. I was going to get over this fear of, imposter syndrome and fear of public speaking and all this stuff. And I was going to dramatically change my life. And so, not to give away the ending, but I
Yeah.
lived. And I ended up getting out of the hospital and immediately started taking flying lessons to overcome this deep-seated fear that I had of flying. And it was the most terrifying thing I ever did. So, I probably went to the bathroom like 4 or 5 times before I even got in the plane the first time. I was so scared. The second time, Joe, we got in the plane, we went over the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we hit some turbulence, this little two-seater plane. I think I actually pooped myself. I mean, just like a little bit, not a lot.
Sure,
And
sure.
and so after the seventh or eighth time lesson, I started to fall in love with flying. And it became the most passionate, fulfilling, exciting thing that I'd ever done. So I got my private pilot's license, I got my instrument rating, I got my commercial rating, I got my seaplane rating, and now I fly stunt planes. I fly aerobatics. And if you asked me 15 years ago, do you want to get in a commercial plane and just fly to Ireland? I would have been terrified. I would have just been scared. So that's when I came to realize that all of our dreams are on the other side of fear. And it's getting to that other side of fear that can really dramatically change your life and change the life for me. So that's where my first book, Fear is Fuel, was inspired by that experience.
So talk to me a little bit about inspirational forces in your life. Who's been that inspiration, that hero for you to get the success and to become who you are?
Um, so my dad, who was is definitely one of my heroes. He started working. He was working three or four jobs when we were growing up in Boston. He was selling shoes in a shoe store. He was delivering liquor to towns that were still on prohibition, that didn't have liquor stores. And then at night, from midnight till 8, he was working for Smithsonian Institute as a key punch operator. And he'd just be inputting data into key punch cards for a computer. So he didn't do it because he knew about computers or was excited about technology. He just did it because it was a good job and it paid pretty well. And one night, he's about 3 years into this job apparently, and this little guy with big ears came in and he said, "Hey, which one of you guys want to double your salary?" And my dad and everyone else raised their hand. And he said he was renting computing time from Blue Cross Blue Shield, this company, and he was going to build a big company. And he explained how. And my dad went to work for him, and the company was called EDS, Electronic Data Systems, and the guy was Ross Perot, who ended up building this multi-billion-dollar company in EDS, and then ran for president. And I can't remember what year he ran for president, like
92 against
92 or
Clinton.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. And so Ross called me on my birthday, mostly because my dad was working for him in Dallas, and so missed my birthday. So they were together, and he called me up, and he gave me a couple of little bits of advice, and he called me again, and I just followed his career and what he did, and he impacted so many lives. He impacted our life because my dad went from three jobs and low pay to having something where he's learning a lot, and he never got a college degree, but he kept progressing and kept progressing and getting smarter and getting more challenged. And so I really loved the way Ross ran those companies and built people up.
So talk to me a little bit about what is your motivation every day to do this work that you do at a high level and to also feed your soul, your family, what you do. What is that energy when the alarm clock goes off in the morning?
So the energy comes from three different areas, I'd say, Joe. One, I want to have 1,000 people build unicorns using the knowledge that I've amassed over the past 20, 25 years. So that's the first goal, is help 1,000 people build a company up to more than $1 billion net worth. Because I think you can do that formulaically. I think you can do it just like the US military produces the best fighter pilots in the world. You can help produce the best entrepreneurs and founders in the world. And that's what I'm doing with this new book, The Founder's Creed. And I get up like this morning, I had a workshop with one of my companies in Singapore, and they're focused on women's health and AI, and they've got a niche that nobody else is doing. And it's super exciting to get up and talk to them about how they're scaling, get the whole team aligned and everyone rowing in the same direction. And you can just see the impact after a month or two of putting these systems in place where they understand what it takes to scale. And it's no longer chaos, it's just a cadence, right? We're doing the same thing over and over again, and we're going to do it fast. And so that's a big part of my personal excitement, is working with those teams, helping to create these super successful companies. The second part, and clearly why I like spending a lot of time here in the French and Italian Alps, is getting outdoors. And I really get energized by being on a mountain, by rock climbing, by cycling, by paragliding, and just being out in nature and out in the universe and realizing how at the same time we're insignificant as these little, dots on the side of a mountain, to the understanding that we're all connected somehow or another. So if someone's having a terrible day and they're being a bit of an ass and being mean, you think to yourself, well, that could clearly be me on any day when I'm having a bad day too. So cut them some slack. You don't know what happened. So I think that the whole idea of our own significant insignificance and then our interconnectedness, I think I get a lot of that when I get outside to the mountains.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you had a big picture book in your hand and you handed it over, and it was your life so far, would that young
Mm.
version of you believe that this life has happened, that it's been orchestrated this way?
Not a chance. Not in a million years.
Yeah,
Because our life, my whole family was either cops or firemen.
yeah,
And if they were, if they wanted to be the star of the family, they became a priest. And and it was, my little league baseball team it wasn't, where are you from? It was what parish? Oh, you
yeah,
guys are from St. Joe's,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And my whole world, it's like the movie Good Will Hunting, right? My whole world was the 10 square miles around Belmont, Mass, where I grew up. And I would have never in a million years think, at some point I'm going to be spending most of my time living in France. I'm going to be going to Milan, Italy, the capital of fashion and business. And, once a week, I'm going to be flying to Nigeria to help with a renewable energy project. Not in a million years, Joe, would I thought that I would have the opportunity to have this life that I had. And if it wasn't for this near death experience with leukemia when I almost died, I probably would have stayed, much more constrained and much more conservative in my life. So, I oftentimes tell people that's the best thing that ever happened to me.
So, of everything that you've accomplished and evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
I think it's obviously cliche, but my ex-wife and I raised three incredible children, and I'm quite proud of Shannon, PJ, and Declan, because they're all three amazing young adults, and I'm definitely very proud of that. And I think that the other thing I'm most proud about is, of all the companies I've started, I now have eight of my direct reports who are CEOs of their own company.
Yeah.
And so that's a testament to what we learned together, as I built my companies and then them going to put it to work in their own company. And every time you start a company, and this is why founders are so important to our economy and the global economy, you're creating jobs for people, you're creating innovations for people, you're creating productivity for your country. And, people pay for college educations and weddings and retirement, all from the work that founders do. So I, from a professional perspective, that makes me the most proud.
So at the end of the day, Patrick, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your books, everyone that knows you in a personal business sense, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
My perception of me is did you ever hear how Van Gogh used to use the same canvas multiple times?
Yeah,
So he'd put one painting down, he didn't like it, and put the next painting down, and all of a sudden it becomes Starry Night or
yeah,
whatever. So that's you've never asked me that, but that's the first thing that came to mind. Or sorry, no one's ever asked me that.
yeah.
That's the first thing that came to mind, is that I'm this canvas that I keep painting over. Like the
Yeah.
more I learn, the more I experience, the more I grow personally. I think, okay, well, I'm gonna change this aspect of me, and the the scared. Um, Morally questionable youth who was, sort of the bad boy trying to get respect and trying not to show fear and everything else, is 720 degrees from where I am today.
So if anybody wants to get a copy of The Founder's Creed, any of your other work, dive in, ask questions, any of the good business, where do they go?
Well, they can go to thefounderscreed.com or pjsweeney.com, Sweeney, or, for all the people who like what we've talked about, if you want to ask me any questions or run some ideas by me or whatever, LinkedIn, I'm the Fear Guru, and Instagram, I'm the Fear Guru as well, Fear Guru as well. But probably the best way is thefounderscreed.com. I'm always happy to talk to the audience, and I really appreciate that people took time out of their day to listen to our story.
Absolutely. No, this has been wonderful. Patrick, thank you, sir. Send my love to the old country. Enjoy the Olympics. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, man.
You bet. Thanks, Joe. Take care.
Great to meet you. Take care.